There are stories that don't leave you. They follow you. Across states. Across decades. Across the silence between life and death. This is the story of the Warrens' final case. A case so disturbing, they never wrote a single word about it. If you've watched any documentary or read any book about Ed and Lorraine Warren, you probably know the famous cases. Amityville, Enfield, the Perron family, and all the hauntings the movies love to exaggerate. But what most people don't know is that the Warrens had one final investigation. One that happened shortly before Ed's passing. One that Lorraine refused to ever discuss publicly. She only mentioned it once to a student researcher before begging him not to record the conversation. He didn't, but he wrote everything down. What you're about to hear is based on those notes and on a single audio tape found years later inside a locked wooden box buried in the Warrens' basement archive. The tape had no label, only a date, July 18th, 2005, and a single phrase etched onto the wood: "Do not play this after dark." It began with a phone call from a man named Michael Graves, a retired firefighter from Massachusetts. He told Lorraine that his daughter Abigail had been acting strangely for months. Night terrors, sleepwalking, conversations with someone who wasn't there. All typical signs of possession, at least on the surface. But then he said something that made Ed sit up. Michael claimed his daughter could describe objects hidden in the attic. Objects she had never seen. Objects he didn't even know were up there. Old photographs, a bundle of children's clothing, and a rusted silver pendant engraved with the initials T.W. When Michael asked her how she knew about those things, Abigail said something that chilled him. "Because he shows them to me." Ed asked, "Who?" And the father said, "She calls him the Watcher." Lorraine went silent for several seconds. Then she agreed to drive up the next morning. Ed didn't want to go. His heart condition was worsening. But he knew Lorraine wouldn't go alone. So he went. And that decision was the beginning of the end. The Graves home didn't look haunted. No broken windows, no strange smell. Just a quiet two-story house on a long, empty road. But Lorraine said the moment she stepped inside, she felt it. A weight, a pressure behind her eyes, like someone was squeezing her skull from the inside. She didn't say anything about it at first. Instead, she followed Michael upstairs to Abigail's room. The girl was sitting on the edge of her bed, 10 years old, pale, thin. Her hair draped over her face like wet straw. Ed introduced himself gently. She didn't respond, didn't even look at him. But Lorraine said the girl did look at her, just not with her own eyes. Lorraine later described the moment saying, "It felt like something inside the girl was staring at me, and it knew who I was." They stayed the night in the house, setting up audio recorders and motion-activated cameras. At 1 a.m, one of the recorders picked up something. A whisper, soft, almost playful. The tape played back. Lorraine. Not the girl's voice, not even human sounding. A layered whisper like several people speaking at the exact same time. Lorraine shook Ed awake. She told him that something was standing outside their bedroom door. Ed grabbed a rosary and walked to the hallway. There was nothing there, just dark, silent air. But the camera facing the hallway captured something. No one could explain. A shadow, moving from one end of the hall to the other. Slow, deliberate, like it was inspecting each door, inspecting them. And then it stopped, right in front of Abigail's room. The shadow didn't disappear. It collapsed, like something fell straight down into the floor. And at that exact second, the girl started screaming. Her scream wasn't the scream of a child. It was deep, raw, a full-grown adult's voice tearing its way out of her throat. Ed and Lorraine ran to her room. The girl was sitting upright in her bed, her neck bent at an unnatural angle, whispering, "You shouldn't have come here." The next morning, Lorraine demanded the father tell them everything. Reluctantly, he explained the truth. The house had belonged to his great-uncle, Thomas Whitlock, a man rumored to be violent, cruel, obsessed with control. He died in the house under mysterious circumstances. Some said it was a heart attack. Others said suicide. But his grandmother insisted he didn't die. He stayed. The necklace in the attic, the one with the initials TW, belonged to him. A man buried without a marked grave. A spirit with nowhere to go. Lorraine said spirits like that don't wander. They cling, especially to children. On the second night, things escalated. At 2:13 a.m., Ed captured something on the hallway camera. A figure, human-shaped, standing at the end of the hall. It wasn't a shadow this time. It had eyes. 2 glowing points, dull, white, and disembodied, staring straight towards the camera. Ed whispered to Lorraine, "It's watching us." Before they could reach Abigail's room, something slammed her door shut from the inside. She began pounding on the walls, screaming phrases in a voice no child should have, not at that age, not with that tone. "Let me out. Let me out. Let me out." But Lorraine said the voice didn't belong to the girl. It belonged to a man. A grown man. Ed forced the door open, and there, in the corner of the room, Abigail was standing perfectly still, face toward the wall, hands dangling at her sides, her head tilted slightly, as though listening to something no one else could hear. Lorraine approached carefully. "Abigail." The girl didn't answer. But something did. From the corner of the room, directly behind her, a whisper bled through the air. "You can't take her from me." Ed prepared for an emergency exorcism. Lorraine tried to bring the girl back with gentle words, prayers, and soft instructions. For a moment, they thought it was working. Abigail's breathing slowed. Her eyes fluttered, her voice softened. Then she looked straight at Ed and said something that froze him in place. "Your time is almost up, Edward." She shouldn't have known his condition. She shouldn't have known his name. And then, crack! Her spine arched backward with a loud snap. Her shoulders touched the mattress, but her feet stayed planted on the floor. An impossible position. Lorraine shouted for Ed to continue reading. But suddenly, Ed clutched his chest, fell to his knees, couldn't breathe. Lorraine ran to him, leaving Abigail restrained on the bed. For 2 minutes, the house went silent. Ed gasped on the floor. Lorraine cried for help. And in the background, the Abigail started humming, a slow, eerie lullaby, completely calm, like she knew she was winning. Ed survived the attack, barely, but the exorcism had to stop. And that was exactly what the entity wanted. At sunrise, the Warrens prepared to leave the house. Ed couldn't continue. He physically wasn't capable. Lorraine promised to return with a priest. But before they could drive away, Michael, the father, came running out of the house, holding Abigail in his arms. She wasn't breathing.
Lorraine grabbed the girl, whispering prayers, begging her to wake up. And she did. But when her eyes opened, it wasn't her. The voice that came out said, "You should have stayed away." The wind slammed every door in the house at once. Birds scattered from the trees. The ground seemed to tremble for a moment. Just a moment. And then the girl collapsed again. This time, she woke up as herself. Just a scared child. Crying. Confused. The entity was gone. Or so they thought. The Warrens left the house that afternoon, but Ed seemed different, distant, quiet. Lorraine later said, "It felt like something had followed us." 3 weeks later, Ed suffered another heart complication, and this one he didn't recover from. Lorraine believed, privately, secretly, that the entity had attached itself to Ed when he tried to save the girl. Not possessing him, not controlling him, just watching, waiting, like it had been doing to the family for decades. The wooden box found in their basement contained one final recording. Lorraine's voice. She sounded older, tired, haunted. On the tape, she whispered, "Some spirits don't want a house, or a child, or a soul. Some only want one thing, a witness." There was a long silence, then the creak of a floorboard, a slow, heavy breath, and Lorraine's final words, "He's still here." The tape ended there. No explanation, no closure, no proof of what she meant. But the box was sealed shut from the inside, and the attic door in the Warrens' home still creaks open every night at 2:13 a.m.